Hello?
So, this is Gabi.
Hi, pleasure.
You saw his project this morning, the dorm buildings.
Oh, very nice. The street.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Yes, hello.
Hi.
This is the fifth year studio.
Yes.
Good.
So we will be glad to join us.
And you're going to present something?
Yes.
A project? A series of projects?
Yes. Actually 8 projects.
Hello? Hi. How are you? I take it. Yeah. How are you?
Hi, I'm Ali.
Hi, hello. Hi, pleasure. This class or your guests?
Actually, we have started the semester about 3 weeks ago. So we are in the beginning, but we'll be glad to hear you.
Oh yeah, the beginning's the best time.
Yes.
No, at the end, that's too late. You have to be kind of honorific and polite, because otherwise you're just leaving depressed. There's nothing you can do about it, right?
All right, so I'm going to leave you in this very
I had your own
class.
class. Okay. Thanks so
See you
much.
later. Bye.
Okay. Please.
My name is Noam, and I'm doing my project on the site, which is an old cement plant called Natural Cement Plant. It is located in the outskirts of Haifa, about 10 minutes from Technion, on the slopes of Mount Carmel. And this is the context of the area. And I will begin to show the mapping of the area, and then all that my thoughts and ideas about how to approach and deal with this complex area. So this is the aerial photo of the area. This is the cement plant, which is located between two lakes that the plant used to take water out of and for the process of the production of the cement. And to the left of the plant is Nesher, which is a city called after the plant, which was built in 1925. So this plant have a long history in this area and in Israel in general. It's almost 100 years old, and it has an important role in the establishment and the physical building of the State of Israel. It was one of the biggest cement plants in the world. In its height, over 1,000 people work there. Today there's only 40. And because this plant is going through a process of being shut down, this one the one that I'm talking about, the main activity of the plant moved to the central to the central of Israel. So this area has lots of complex connections between elements that are in it. The plant and its surroundings has been changed dramatically through time, and in every period that we look on the factory, the relations are being changed, and we have complex connections between the plant and the natural surroundings around it, the plant and the city that nourished its development, and there are lots of connections between along history because, as you probably know, Israel has a lot of political arguments with its neighbors. So also next to the plant there used to be an Arab a village that after the establishment of Israel was gone, and the only thing left is the Muslim cemetery that is located next to the plant. So we'll just continue to show you more physically how the site looks like. So we have the slopes of the slopes of Mount Carmel, and next to it the plant just between the valley and the mountain. You can see the how is the plant located next in between two dramatical natural areas, which is the lush green mountain, Carmel Mountain, and the agricultural fields in the valley, and the two lakes. You can see it here in this picture. The plant is being disconnected from those two areas by two main roads, main highways. This is the town of Nesher, which was established around the year which the plant was established, and workers of the plant were living in this area. Later on, Nesher, the city, was developed to the other way and up on top of the mountain, which left this area of the plant and the small part of Nesher, the highlighted one, quite disconnected from the rest of the main city of Nesher. This is the small Muslim cemetery, which is just is lying next to the plant. Is not active anymore, and this is the remains of.
It's active, but it's not used.
Yes,
they are still dead.
And you can see the town of Nesher just behind the cemetery on the mountain slopes. On top of that, we have the new industrial area that serves that connects to Nesher, and they nourish each other, which leaves the area of the plant and the small hill disconnected from this area, and some new developments from the last 5 years that are not necessarily connecting or having any relations with the existing fabric. And this is a new plan of a new railway that will pass through the factory's area. So I marked a few areas in this big area that I want to deal with, which is the old cement mill here, the old Muslim cemetery, this small part of Nesher located on a hill, and an old quarry that used to serve the plant. You can see the quarry today, it's being unused over 40 years now. So the nature has some effect on it after so many years of neglecting it. I will show you now some selected buildings and structures inside the plant that I want to deal with, and I think they have some potential for a total urban rejuvenation of this area. So here there is the main shed of the plant, which is 70 meters by over 200 meters. It's really big, and you can see the human scale against these buildings. And I think this building has lots of power and really a big presence in this area. This is another big shed which used to store some dry materials for the process of the cement making. And this is another conveyor belt that led from the old quarry into the factory. Some silos, unused silos, and so forth. And that's about it. And now I'm trying to look on some relations between elements in the area, and every time I take a factor and compare between two elements, the relations are being changed really upside down. If you look on how the plant and the nature reacts to each other, or the footprint of the plant and nature, and the footprint of the the cement plant and the Muslim cemetery, which is totally hard to tell how they can connect in the future, especially when this factory is being shut down. And I believe something new should be entered and regenerate new activity inside this whole compound. So every time you check the connections between the elements in this entire context, your thought is being changed, and the program and your intentions are being changed. And I will rapidly show you some sections I passed through the area to try to understand how all kinds of variables are being changed through the section. I marked some elements I want to preserve, like the silos and sheds I showed you before. I marked the built mass that is present in this area.
The lower line is.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, the upper line going with the section is the intensity of these elements, and the lower line is the distribution along the section line. So there is the natural vegetation, and there is this subject, which is really a subjective subject and is something that is more intuitive to me, which is the land and its emotional or symbolic charge, which means let's say if we have a cemetery, the emotional or the symbolic charge is being very different against, let's say, a cement plant, which taking raw land and rendering it to something else, which is something more functional, something more which suits more to the ideology of the building of the country, especially in its early years. Or if you look on the lower section, there is a different symbolic charge for a quarry or an old quarry that's have been scarred, and it's not the natural form of the land, and so forth. I won't go into it. And I mapped some scarred spaces that I think some new elements or old elements that are now present on the ground that are not necessarily reacting in a good manner with the rest of the area, and some transportation mapping. And in the end, I just took all this data and just put it together to form a unified line that will show me the highs and the lows and the intensity or the lack of intensity of these variables. And after doing this, I took this system of taking the distribution and intensity of each element and just try to project it back on the area, just in again in more like intuitive manner. And then I try to mark the intense area, the ones that the high areas against the low areas, and then try to form this initial new structure just to understand how I will approach to this site, because it's very complex one. So you can see that I left selected parts of the plant to preserve, and I let the green areas, or the green the natural vegetation. I have the brown areas which are more connected to the emotional charge of the land, or the symbolical part, which you can see here in the cemetery, or the old quarry, or some buildings that are connected to the legacy of the cement making in this area, and so forth. Which is and I think one of the most important things to me is to connect to the two sides of the areas next to the plant, which is the lake part and the mountain part, through this new program which I'm still thinking about. And you can just see this first thing here, and that's it. I'm done.
Okay.
Just want to mention that this project is a whole year. So it is actually an initial part of the project, only the first analysis and the first ideas, because we have the whole year to run it.
For the next student, we will have to
crucial.
For the next student, we will have to make it a little bit shorter, okay, and try to make it more intensive. Okay.
What do you know?
We will speak after two presentations, fine?
Two at once?
I suggest that we will see another one, and then, okay?
There's a lot to talk about.
Okay, so let's start.
Maybe it's
that was
better.
really a complicated one.
Okay.
Could you put up the last slide again?
Sure. Nafed,
No, it's interesting, because this is, I would have had some precisely talk about, because you're establishing that sometimes it's solving the problem. And I have a whole series of questions. I guess I would start with a general, it's coffee, I wish.
Yeah.
It's going to help a lot. So I come from New York 2 days ago, and I've gone college. Your last time?
נשאר אספרסו, תביא.
It's interesting, I think that the trajectory from the first part of the conversation was analyzing the areas. And then you shift into an absolutely clear operational strategy of your intensities. And then you take the operational strategy, which was very abstract as a line, and you project it into, it's leading to this. And I would raise all kinds of flags that you're inventing an immensely arbitrary idea to try to solve the problem. And I would go back to the original analysis and be much more hard-headed. This is not an architectural formal problem. This is a problem that requires a strategic, tactical approach, right? And I would have said, if you go back to your analysis in the beginning, I would have kept asking questions. You're just, yeah, this stuff, all of it. You're describing more or less literally what's on the page. And you're not going, you really haven't started in your analysis because it's clear. The drawings already say what you want to say, and the words are just more or less describing the drawing. And you're looking at this village, and I'd want to know, you're going to really begin a dialogue of, it's a concrete factory and it moved. Why? Is there a reason for an intensity? Does this scale have a factor in making concrete in terms of its region? What does it supply? What does it do? And you're really understanding the notion
of the trajectory of the loss of this as an industry in terms of its right. Because with that, by the way, when you show the housing, your village next to it, yeah, there. Well, the first thing is going to be clearly, if that's closed, there's going to be an impact on the housing. It's not about a figure ground. It's not the physical quality on the hill. That's just what it is, right? It's about the social, economic, cultural, political, right, ramifications. And then you could assume that just as the plant is empty, I can only assume that a lot of the housing is empty. And with the housing goes the service commercial, and you're starting to make linkages between people that used to work in the factory, the people that serve those people, and it's a downward spiral that takes place with a large. I assume that you didn't say that this is a town with a single industry, right? So it's incredibly vulnerable to that single industry, right? So the single industry leaves, and the question would be, does the town even exist? It'd be fair to ask, is there even a problem? It'd be totally fair to ask, right? What have I got here in front of me? Would it make sense to invest? What does it mean to work on this project and to invest on the resurgence, the reworking of this town, blah, 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 right? Other than the fact that you like the factory, and all of us agree, we're architects, that it has the quality of that. Okay, so we can agree upon that. And that would lead you into another direction of the project, that you actually have sympathy for the quality of the architectural of this post-industrial piece of work, right? Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. And that would already give you a bias, which is fair. Okay, I'm trying to preserve this and find some use for it. But I think to do that, it's going to take a much more intensive conversation of really the urban dynamics of this problem, and it would have to be looked at in economic terms, in social terms, in political terms, etc. Right? And you would now analyze really the status of this in terms of its reality within those terms, right? And it's not an architectural, it's not a physical problem, right? These are the issues that are the formation of a city, right? It starts with economic, social, political, blah, 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 right? Ecological, but you showed the quarry, which was grown over, meaning it's just an augmented landscape. You don't have to do anything. It just exists. It exists, right? And then again, you show the town above, and you go, okay, what we really want to know, what is the relationship of that town? Was that the service town? That this was the main employer?
Yeah.
And you'd maybe want to know, by the way, these people employed X amount of people, and it was versus your curves down the bottom, which are all subjective. Well, was this a long trajectory? Was it just, did it just move like this? It's probably important to understand the dynamics of the closure, because you're going to affect the older town, the second town above it, and then the commercial district. You know it. Is a lot of it closed and destitute now? You know the town. Is it destitute? The shops are closed?
Mostly in the lower part. In the
the upper ones are still open. You need a lot. Kind of talk about that. Right, what and where the township is, and really understand the dynamics. Because I think what will happen, go again? And then you discuss the highway, and there's no whys. Why are they two highways? Why is there a railroad? Now it's going to be another conversation, macro, micro. So you're looking at the factory. Let's assume that's the smallest increment architecturally. It's the factory itself. And then the next one is the factory and the town, or the factory and the two towns, and that's the next city scale setting. You've got to go way up again. Once you show the rail or the highway, we have to know X to X. The highway's servicing something, and there's a reason for it, right? Ditto railway, right? And maybe it's not a very good idea. You're going to be able to talk about it, why it's there, and how it actually influences. The highway can contribute to the killing of the town. Typical in my country, in the U.S., a freeway can come through, and all the little towns in the south. I drove through the States as a young man years ago, and you could stop in all kinds of little towns. It was an amazing trip, the 3,000 miles from East Coast to West Coast, or vice versa. Go back in the 80s, the 90s, they're all freeways. You missed everything. And you're moving 4 times faster, right? And the towns don't, right? And they didn't get it. Now they get it. they're smart now. Because now they see the political, economic implications, and there'll be a definite discourse. There'll be a fight politically to put it at the highway end. But at that time, they didn't get it. It was just a zipping by, no town. So I'm looking at these going, rail, and well, is that useful? The point being is, how does it contribute to your problem? How does it contribute to your project, right? Is what you really want to know. You're looking at, you're asking the implications of these things. In each of these, you're investigating, and it's going to have to do with the scale of the engagement, and it's going to have to do what are the questions that are connecting the dots. Because that's what you're doing here. Kiesler, he talks about creation, the act of creation. He has this really kind of really simple idea of creativity, which is connecting dots, and the more non sequitur the dots, the higher the level you operate creatively, and you've got a problem that's way out there. You've got all these kind of linkages of things. And what you're really doing is not describing the thing, you're describing connection between the things. So what is rail? You describe two rails going by, that's self-evident. That's saying nothing. That's what exists. The discussion is, what are the implications of that at various scales in terms of whether, again, it's economics, political, cultural, infrastructural, etc., right? And so on and so forth with all the pieces. Because then, keep going, because I think that's going to lead you, because again, these are just describing the pieces now, because there's a big jump here. And now, stop these. Okay, so this is, you're claiming your bias. Fair enough. You want to say it. Interesting building, right? And so you could even claim that really what you're trying to do is try to find a use for it. So finally, if you're successful, I think, I'm correct, right? Otherwise, it'd be no product. But you want to find some use for this, and you want to make this somehow viable, and you want to bring it to the present, right? And so really, that's your product. Am I right? That's the base of your product. So all the way through it, you would be going, well, what's it missing? And now we do need a macro. Where are we in the country? I don't know where we are. Give me some macro. What's this useful to? What's it connect up with some town? Is it a school? Is it, if you'd put Dia Beacon up New York, up the river, it's a 2-hour drive to New York, an hour-and-a-half drive. It was a huge factory that they made into a museum. And it's a very, very beautiful exhibit. They found a use for a space that was empty. It was incredibly inexpensive. It's in the middle of nowhere, but it's still an hour-and-a-half from New York. And you're looking for that, right? And they feel minimal start, and you have lots of space. So it's fantastic. You can look at V. Maria, and they give them a room the size of this floor plate, right? And on. And it's just fantastic, right? And they found that economic, pragmatic use. It's right on a rail from New York, so you can get on in Central Station and get there an hour-and-a-half ride, on and up, right? And they found that use for it, and they made it work in economic terms, infrastructural terms, etc. You're looking for kind of that. So you're now analyzing also what could go in here. School. You're looking for anything that they could use the qualities that you admire, right? And you keep going. Go to, and I think this is where go by this stuff when you started with the subjective. And again, the sheds and the pieces, and you're trying to find, these are just sections now. This is where I think you got problems. And by the way, this is, I think it's, you've probably been on, this is all 5th year? Yeah, you've been on juries. I remember getting caught in this trap myself. I'll never forget it. About 10 years ago, I was heading a class like this, same class. And I had this very, very talented, facile, just beautiful hand, and produced this amazing piece. He was working in Phoenix. And I got kind of bullshitted, bowled over by the guy's facility, who produced this just insanely beautiful, just incredibly articulate model. And in the crit, it was a good jury. The very first question challenged the premise of the project, and he couldn't answer. And I just about died. And I take pride in my students. He's kidding him, he's kidding me. This is my fault. And he couldn't answer. And it was a good question. He got trashed. And you looked at it, if you'd have walked through the school and looked at 90 projects, you would have just, without a question, said, that's the guy. Just like that. This is just a really, really super talented guy. And so it's really important when you're doing these projects, the basis of the thing has to be thought out. Otherwise, you're using all your effort, all your talent. It doesn't matter how talented you are formally, what you can bring to bear to it. You have to have the basic, the structure of the thinking of your methodology in a project like this. Otherwise, someone will ask the first question, go through in some parallel what I'm doing, try it in another way, and you're going to be stuck. And if you, to me, you go to this one, next one, the orientation. Yeah, now you are building up a rationale, and it's based on a very clear process because you model it and you give it intensities, and you give it intensities based on certain, some of them very obvious, like mass, which is obvious next, and some of them get more subjective. Preservation, and preservation to what? If you make it into a university, an art gallery, blah, 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 depends. You have no idea. You need more information. Go ahead. And vegetation, forget it. Go ahead. Okay, now emotional. Now we're just in, come on, you're in your brain somehow, and this is no longer a real project. How many, your emotions are symbolic? Who's symbolic? Whose emotions? This is a public project. It has nothing to, honestly, nobody cares what your emotional state is, as long as you're somehow sane and don't hurt people. Really, it's, keep going. Okay, so keep going. Scarred, transportation, that's what you're going to make out of it. And then you put them together, and now you're building up a structure of subjective interpretations. And now the next one, and you add them up. Okay, now you're really confusing a methodology of analyzing a problem with a completely abstract formal idea of translating one thing into another that has its 100% interpretive idea that means nothing until you prove it, right? And now you're overlaying, after all this analysis, you're overlaying a completely arbitrary set of conditions that have absolutely nothing to do with anything you're going to talk about, right? That because you need a system, I'm going to talk about this in my talk tonight. You need some organizing system, and you're aware of that, and you're looking for some method, and you really don't yet have. It's not, you're not capable of integrating the reality of your analysis. You can't align a formal strategy, a physical strategy, with an alignment of what you know about the project in terms of your analysis, your intelligence. Because I would have thought, I think if you take the first part, that you just need much more intelligence, and it has to be much more comprehensive. So you actually, you can digest and even internalize the subjective part, internalize the problem at a whole different level that tells us something we don't even know. That you're going to become literally a professional. You're going to be able to, you're going to develop an authority about this project. So when you stand in front of a jury, you are going to know things that the juror can't possibly know. It's your project. And you're the one that's investigated, right? And you're going to have a huge amount of information that we're going to listen to, and we can now argue with interpretive aspects of it and how you utilize the information. But still, you have a body of information that have made these connections that will lead to, maybe it's not even formal. You're assuming it's a formal solution. Maybe it's much more strategical or tactical, right? Maybe it doesn't even lead to a design. Who said it leads to design? There might be a policy. I'm working in Haiti right now. There's the biggest problem is a food source. It has to do with the U.S. subsidizes rice. And so the biggest problem, and there's a birth control problem. And it's participated by the Catholic Church. And the two biggest problems we located in my research group aren't architectural yet. We have to stop having so many babies. And that's going to be a very deep social, cultural, religious problem. And the U.S. has to shift its policy towards subsidizing rice because it's killing the agricultural business. And we haven't got to the physical yet. We'll do that. But we first have to just understand the problem. Because obviously what's needed here is you really have to understand the problem more thoroughly, decide even where you're going to go on the solution, right? And it wouldn't be impossible that you're just not going to get stuck. Right? I would think it'd be useful to keep open the idea that you might abandon it. It's hopeless. This isn't where you put money in. I don't know enough about the product because you'd have to go much further. That probably won't happen. But I think if you're really honest about the product, you have to look at it openly, right? That would this be a place? Who's going to invest in it, by the way? And then you need to know a bigger, again, a more macro. In the country of Israel, is it a national state? I don't know what it is. Kind of where's the problem located in terms of the how is it seen in a broader sense, right? Make sense? Yeah. I think it starts at the beginning. You have to get much more thorough to really describe and understand the funny, you don't talk to people. You don't interview people. It's all this thing. And you just, it wouldn't be the best, if you were a lawyer, a trial lawyer, you couldn't do this. You just have to have information. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. You're going to go into the adversarial condition, and it's going to be who knows more about the problem. It's as simple as that. And you want to be in that position. I think at this stage in your project, I can claim certain statements because I have a somewhat vast amount of knowledge about this particular set of configurations at this time in history, right? Having to do with this plant and what its effect was on its community. I assume infrastructure is the fact schools change, police departments, and fire departments, and hospitals, right? How many people work in the plant?
Today?
No, when it used to.
1,000 in the...
1,000.
Yeah.
And now?
Now 40.
40. So it closed. 1,000 isn't a lot, but 1,000 is in that little town times a kid and a half. So that's 4,000 people, 3,500 people. Plus now the grocery store and the laundry, and so that's multiplied again times 2. That's like 8,000 people, right? That's what it would be to draw a map and to really look at the implication of that. And where'd they go, by the way? Did they find other jobs here? Did they zip out to other towns? And that'd be the map. Give you one more thing. Look on. And the other thing is that I would look at it dynamically, not static. Everything should be looked at over time. Everything's moving, and everything's connected. Because you're dealing with a dynamic problem, right? And a highly relational problem. Everything connects to everything else. So if the plant closes, an elementary school closes. And if elementary school closes, the teachers also go somewhere. That kind of thing. And I think you're going to find that extremely interesting. And it might lead you to something much more interesting. My guess is that's what will lead to replace this. That will lead you to a thinking that requires a strategy to solve a problem that you understand in a very, very different way. Is it helpful?
Yeah. Great.
Mr. Mayne,
Okay.
do you know which year Kassir said this statement about the connection of the dots?
Oh my God.
When he said
בהצלחה.
Again, a problem of multicultural historical context. Olivia.
איפה רואים? תנסה להגיד לו ש... תתאחף אחרי זה, טוב?
Okay.
So my project is in Nazareth. My name is Oliver Shalvi, and I would like just to get you a little orientation where Nazareth is situated in Israel. So it's in the North District, and it's 1 hour far away from Haifa. And as some of you know, Nazareth is a very rich, culturally rich city, which was influenced by different cultures over time. And the other reason why I'm working in Nazareth is because it's my home city and I feel some kind of relation to this city. So Nazareth, it was basically it was a small settlement situated around the well, which is called today the Mary's Well, which is the only source of water in the city. And over time it grew rapidly, especially after the declaration of the Christianity in the West and the announcement of the Christian faith. And as I said, it was influenced by many different cultures, and the most recent cultures were the Ottoman Empire and the British Mandate. Okay, so now I'll just mention some few of the different architecture influences which were influenced by the West, and how these kind of cultures also affected the society itself in the city. So here's a plan of Nazareth. It's not a plan, it's an aerial view, and as you can see, here is the Basilica of the Annunciation, which is the landmark of the city, and this one is the Paulus Access Street, which is the main street of the city as well. And as I said, many cultures have influenced the city, and they changed the demographics of the city over time. And today, the demographics are the majority of the city are Muslims, and the minority are Christian. And it consists of 70,000 people. So I'll just mention a few of the influences of the different cultures on the architecture of the city, and then I will try to combine it and connect it to the society and how it affected the society itself. So starting from the Crusaders era, which was in 1231, when they built the Basilica of the city, which is today the landmark of the city. And I will try to show some pictures just to impress and show what the city is all about. This church is called the Annunciation because according to Christian faith, they received the message about Jesus' birth in Nazareth. Jesus' birth, they got the message in this place. Other influences are the French influence. There are many French buildings, and the most famous are the French hospital and Sister of Nazareth Convent and the Salesian Church, this one, which is also another landmark of the city. Italian influences or the Vatican influences include the Franciscan Convent or the Mensa Christi Church, which is built on the rock where Jesus and the disciples used to have supper on it. Other influences are the Scottish influence, where they have this EMMS hospital, which is a really famous hospital also in the city. And the Russian influence, we have some buildings. This building is called the Moscovia, which is the center of the Russian pilgrims in Nazareth, and some Orthodox churches around the city. Also Greek influences. This Orthodox Annunciation Church is situated near the Mary's Well, which is the city center somewhere here. And also, as I said, the recent influences like the Ottoman Empire, which built some mosques, and this is the White Mosque, which is this is the oldest mosque in the city, and also some kind of buildings like the Saraya building or the bathhouse buildings. And now a little about the city structure itself. As I said, there's one axis called the Paulus Street, which is this one, and this is the main axis of the city, and it grew over time with the topography of the city. And it's also the most active and intense street. If we were talking about infrastructure, the density of the cars and the traffic is really high in this street. And as you can see here, also this street has the most intense functions. All the business are situated along the street. And it also functions as the main piazza of the city. People just go out in the street, and all the celebrations are held along the street. And in the end of the street, there's the main square, which is adjacent to the church, and they have all kinds of events in this square. And this is some views from the main square, around the main square, and all the different buildings from different cultures just clash or live together. And now I want to talk a little about the open spaces in the city. As I mentioned before, Nazareth was a small settlement, and it grew over time. And the lands of the city belong to private people. Some of the lands belong to private people, and the density just grew, and there was an urban sprawl, and people just from generation to generation grew in one place and built more and more in the same place, which has led to a very high density in the city, and there was a lack of open spaces because it was never pre-planned. It just grew over time, and there's a very clear lack of open space in the city. And if we see some open space in the city, most of them are inaccessible because they belong to private groups or organizations like churches and many other organizations. And if we're talking about the city itself, about Nazareth, we cannot ignore the adjacent city, which is Nazareth. It's a city that was developed in 1954 or 52, if I'm not mistaken. And it was all pre-planned, and it has a very different lifestyle and different architecture, and it's all about modernist buildings. And as you can see here, the two sides, this is Nazareth and this is Nazareth, and there's only one street separating the two cities from one another. And now I want to talk about how this new city affected the city of Nazareth.
What's the figure ground, the map? That's the two of them together?
Yes, that's Nazareth.
Nazareth
that's
is the white.
Nazareth is this one, the gray one, and that's Nazareth.
So
this is the street separating.
and it joins it.
Yes.
And what's the white piece in the middle of the?
This white piece is it's a settlement called Ein Maher. It's something that doesn't belong. Like it's not Nazareth, but it's inside.
But it's developed.
It's also a village. It's a small village.
Did you recognize that boundary? So if you're looking at just urbanized area, it would be gray.
Yes.
These are literally administrative.
Okay. So I want to talk a little about the city itself. Nazareth is situated on a very strong topography. There's on one side there's mountains, and on the other side there's agricultural spaces, and Nazareth is situated somewhere in between. And one place, Nazareth city, also stops this urban sprawl of Nazareth. And and I want to talk a little about how Nazareth Elite affected Nazareth. First of all, they built it, and as I said, it was pre-planned, and they had all kinds of functions and services in the city, while Nazareth was lacking this kind of services. And some people from Nazareth just moved out and went to Nazareth Elite because it offers different kinds of services which Nazareth don't. And this thing where people just migrate from one place to another to go to Nazareth Elite because they have everything there, has created a problem in the old city, which is situated in Nazareth here, which was once the center and the powerful place of the city, and today it's losing strength because people are just leaving their businesses, going somewhere else, and enjoying different services. And these are some pictures of the old city by the time it was the main center of the city, and today it's just something like this. Businesses are closed, nothing really happens there, and the socio-economic level of the people there is considerably low in Nazareth. And yeah, as I said, nothing really happens there, and I think it's a very strong, and it has a lot of potential to get some sort of functions, but also because the main street of Nazareth, which is called Paulus, has the main strength of the business. People just left this area, and nothing really happens there, and tourism is going down, and it's getting weaker and weaker. And a little about the society itself. In the year 2000, there was a project called Nazareth 2000 where they wanted to turn Nazareth into World Heritage in the UN and create a tourist center that would attract tourists from all over the world. And one of the project's approaches were to take this central square, which is in front of the church, in front of the basilica, and create some sort of piazza that will have access directly to the church. And it turns out to be that there were shrines of a figure that was important for the Muslim community, and then some clashes and conflicts happened between the people, and this has led to conflicts that we can feel still today between different cultures in the city itself. And although, as I said, people just left the old city, there are still some functions and some restaurants, coffee houses that are situated on the border between the old city and the city itself, which are still there, and they have their own strengths. But the city itself, the city is having all the projects going to the periphery of the city, and they're just leaving the center, and this is another parameter that is taking the strength out of the center to the periphery, and is just weakening the city center. And also, I'm talking about the typology itself. Although this building is considerably okay with if we compare it to the old city, but still there are a lot of worse projects going on in the periphery. I'm talking about the global versus local, how it's changing from the center. It's some sort of lifestyle that was distributed in the area, and today we see people just going in apartment buildings, and it's a totally different lifestyle. And it's just in the same city, but this is in the border of the city.
What is it actually missing? We haven't said what's...
Okay, I'll get to the points and then I'll just conclude everything.
You can say what's missing in the old city, what the problems are really.
Okay, I'll just get to it in a few slides. Now I just checked a few typologies of the city itself, from the old city going out to the apartment buildings and the neighborhood. And here it's very easy to see and just distinguish the different layers of the city itself. You can see this is the old city, and then another layer which is totally different, and again another layer which is completely different also with the apartment buildings. And also checking the city sections themselves and seeing the relation between the open spaces and the street and different typologies of the building in one street. Okay, and now I'll get to the points. First of all, I listed the problems that I noticed in Nether. First of all, one problem is the open spaces. As I said, it grew rapidly, and there was this sort of urban sprawl, and it was never pre-planned, and this didn't give any space for open spaces to be there in the city, and people don't have this kind of open public space where they can gather and do different activities. And if there are open spaces, they just grew spontaneously. So one approach is, I said that I wanted to add another layer to the city, a new layer that will enable people to have this open spaces, but there's some sort of paradox, because I'm saying there is no open space, and on the other hand I'm saying that I want to create some sort of typology that will enable open spaces to the vertical axis. And here is a study that was done by a doctor in our faculty about the social tensions in the city itself. And as I said, after the project Nether 2000, many people felt that a lot of spaces in the city are, he talked about space of risk, and they lack trust in these spaces because of the conflicts that happen in the city itself. And the old city is the point where these trusts are very low, and people feel vulnerable in the economic aspects, or also in trust between people, and these kinds of relations between people just deteriorate. And here are some figures that show some studies about the questionnaire they gave people, and they answered questions about the conflict. And it's clear that the social life has deteriorated since, and there are some kind of social tensions. And another thing is that the city itself is, on the one hand, it's addressing the outside. It's addressing the tourism, and in my opinion, it's leaving and it's neglecting the local people. And so now I'll get to the conclusions and the point. So I talked about three things: the open spaces and the social tensions between people, and the urban fabric, which is changing from the old city and different places in the city. So I know that I want to make a project that will be situated somewhere somewhere around the old city, and maybe something that will also go inside the old city, and that will try to revive the center of the city itself, and also answer these problems about the open spaces and the urban fabric itself. And also because the old city is a place where social tensions are very, very high between different people of the city itself. So I want to create something that can gather people there. It can change the tourism in the old city and bring life back to the old city.
We started, I'm okay now, because to me you already, it's really good. I maybe just have a different, I mean, that's what you did by guess, right? Have a different approach to these problems. And it seems to be that the first one was really a great start. You're asking, how do I participate as an architect in a problem? That's the first question you asked. It's my role as an architect. Right? And without assuming that you're designing something, because that's not true today. You're assessing a problem, right? And you're assessing very significant, complicated, intricate problems, right? And like you kept referring to tension, but you never talked about it. So I assume one of the issues here is a political problem, which would have to be talked about, because it's going to have hugely to do with, again, your role in the problem. But again, I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, old cities, why do they need open space? It's not a problem with Amsterdam, highly in demand. Definitely not any Italian city. You can go through any Siena, Florence. I'm going to Milan tomorrow. The old part of the town is absolutely thriving. In fact, it's precisely the density. In downtown New York, Manhattan, it's unique, and it's insane kind of density, right? And it's Cuba. You could go to developing countries, not a problem in Cuba. Havana, absolutely, Old Town is highly looked after. So I'm not buying that argument at all. And why do you need open space? They don't need open space. It's what it is. It represents the time in history. And by the way, it seems to be back in sync. Any of you guys use open space? It's absurd. We have iPhones. No one uses positive. When you go to Piazza San Marco, you realize you're in the middle of the Renaissance, right? It's a completely different. We don't build piazzas anymore, right? We build theaters, and our communication is this, right? Nobody, you guys go out and meet your friends in piazzas? Maybe, if you're in a historical city, right? I'm going to show you a project where
I built from your pocket.
Oh, Mandrill. Oh, that's where I ate it. And it was a nostalgic act of developing some idea of a city center of Los Angeles that we knew would never be used, because we filled with stuff, right? Knowing that we're nostalgic, or we're yearning for some space in LA. And so I don't buy the central argument at all. And by the way, old and new, Paris is one model. Modern city, it's the largest museum in the world. It's only one building, Montparnasse, and they want to tear that down for the last 30 years. And that's one model. London, Tokyo, the other model, old and new, cheek by jowl. So you have different ways of approaching the old city and the new city. And there'd be a discussion, so why are those models, what do they produce? Because they're two very opposing ideas, right? And you can decide that one is more interesting, or one is more appropriate for Paris, and one is more appropriate for London, etc. Right? As well as its cultural, the French versus the English, which are a very, very different idea of history, and their role in history, and their predominance within certain centuries, etc., right? It has to do with the French culture and the English culture. And then the two cities side by side, well, that's just as a relief valve. That actually allows you to keep the old city. But then right after that, you look at the old city. What is the problem? Why are people moving out of the old city? Is it problems with certain types of infrastructure? You mentioned the political. My guess is you don't want to go into that, but you would start with the political. This from your presentation. And by the way, now your role as an architect is going to be somewhat diminished, other than articulating the problem. This is a problem I can't solve. This is a political problem that I can articulate and can be written about and talked about. But by the way, if that doesn't get solved, I don't have to worry about designing stuff. Irrelevant, completely meaningless, and it'd be one of those questions that erases your whole project. So what are we talking about? You're still designing stuff, and you just told us it's an unsolvable problem, and it's a deep political underpinning problem. Then why are you in? You should be working in another part of town. Are we going to invest money in something we've already decided is not solvable? And you'd have to discuss the nature of that. And then with that, are there literally are there not services, plumbing, water, electricity, infrastructure, movement, etc.? Is it not? Because that's solvable, right? They can do that on a barrios in Venezuela. Those are solvable problems, right? And it's not a favela. This very, very famous village, town, whatever it is, right? It grew accretionally, which is interesting. You could show us how it grew. It might be interesting to you. It grew over time, and it's exactly that accretional growth that probably gives it all its qualities that you so much admire. It's so beautiful. That those accretional systems that you gave a critique of, actually. The modern city was, you said it was organized, and you said it in a pejorative, organized. It's too rational. So you were giving a critique going backwards to the thing you admire, the accretional, happenstantial, right, thing that is the old town. Seems like, again, you need to really, I have no idea why these people are moving out, unless it's singularly a political problem. And it's
No, they're moving out because they don't have a space to park their car.
It's also an
you put in
problem.
infrastructure to park a car. I mean, come on, I can name any old city in the world and they solve those problems. It's where you want it. It's where it's really expensive to live. I live in Soho. Tell me about it. A car costs more than 4 or 5 apartments in this town.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't have a car. You walk into the subway. I mean, come on. But if you literally went to historic cities, now the most expensive flats are in the middle of the historic part of Amsterdam. You can literally rattle off every city in the world, right? And they're going to be the most sought after places. So that's going to be a hard argument for flat. But then it's going to be much more. He didn't say a car. I'm like, what is the infrastructure that's so inconvenient that you don't want to live there and you want to go to a new? Is it okay? Not an amazing place, but something that just has some modern whatever conveniences. And then, by the way, why couldn't you plug in, if you could articulate the problem, why couldn't you solve it by inserting stuff? They cleverly put in so many bloody underground parking lots, this and that. They made it into a workable modern city. You look at the historic stuff to say, and they basically solved the infrastructure to some degree, right? And again, it's going to be the most expensive. It's going to be the most sought after counterpart of the city.
I think the problem here is mainly political, because it is not a regular old town, which is all right, old but condensed. But the infrastructure is very undeveloped. The new town and the old town are occupied by different peoples. And
who's in the old town?
So the old town mainly occupied by Arabs, and the new town which grew around it is an Israeli town.
Wouldn't that be the first thing you should
So
know?
Jewish, Julian.
It's not a group that's shy about politics, I assume. I mean, Arab Jews, okay? Is that solvable? He's an architect, and he's embarking on a 15-week or a year studio. And okay, it seems as though that's a conversation you have to have. What is it in the Arabness that would change your approach as an architect to make him change it? Because he's about to show us a design, and I'm already completely not interested, because I'm convinced
Actually,
he's
it's
making
the
this.
design itself. It's a vision.
No, but once you start drawing, though, I'm getting now, time to talk. Because it's like, maybe you should be designing a billboard or an ad that goes into a television station, and that's what your role as an architect. And I'm going to put up billboards, and I'm going to figure out what I have to say to somehow solve a problem that has to do with this Arabness, whatever that is. That's pretty big. We haven't gotten really close yet. right? And I'm going to be much more expansive to what I think your role as an architect is. And I think especially with your generation, I would have said architecture has become much more strategical and tactical. And no longer we make things. That's my era. I make things. Kind of, I make stuff, right? And I'm changing. That's 10 years ago I've already started rethinking that, right? And you make these beautiful things and you see yourself as a designer. Well, 10 years ago I stopped that. I'm a thought leader. I'm not a designer. That's one thing. It's not even the most interesting thing anymore. The problems of your generation, I would say, they don't need more architects. Tons of architects. You need another cup. You need more and more designs. I would say, yes, there'll always be. All of you doing that? Ridiculous. What are the most engaging, compelling problems today? I would think these are the kind of problems they're doing. They're going to be large-scale, infrastructural, urban, social projects. You'll get jobs at the UN. They might be third world countries, whatever it is. Right? And they'll be exactly the kind of problems you're working on right now. And to do that, I think you really have to confront. You're no longer in this little world where you can use what you think you know, the sketch and the drawing and your little formal language. Again, the first guy, same thing for sure. In fact, radical, all of a sudden he puts kind of this formal thing down, you go, what? You just lost everybody in the room. There isn't one politician, anybody in the economic world, a sociologist, you lost them all. What are you talking about? It's like a piece of an art piece. I thought we were talking about the project. Right? It's not an art piece, it's a project, right? And it's a project that's embedded in political, cultural, social, infrastructural kind of ideas. And we haven't got to the ecological or the broader kind of notions of the natural problems that have to do with the first one. Again, it'd be what is even the output? Because it's going to have to do with your assessment of the problem. And again, you haven't even touched, you just kept obliquely referring to the problematic, the political problematic. So build it for the Arabs. This is a dumb answer. So build it up. I don't know what the problem is yet. You just said it's Arabs. The Arabs are Jews. They're just human beings. The Arabs and Jews live that differently. You're from the same tribe, by the way. Absolutely same tribe. You go to the seven tribes, you're the same tribe. I'm not. I'm a little to the left or right. Although we all came through the same place, which is very close to here. But really, so that you go back, so, okay, that's one of the parts of the problem. Keep going. What does that mean?
It's a statutory
right?
problem.
And it's still tourists. You just gave us a little clue. The tourists go there. It's the Arab part of town. Other people don't want to live there. Well, whoever's want to live there. Now I'm really confused. So who doesn't want to live there? What's the problem? And now I'm going to guess, because you're not telling me, oh, I'm smelling economics. There's no money there. Why? Because the Arabs don't have the same jobs. Come on. So I'm going, okay, so we have got a cultural problem, and we have an economic problem, and we have a political problem. Where does that leave me? Here I am, you, architect / urban designer, engaging in this problem. You chose the problem. You come from that, right? Yeah, it's your problem. Where are we? We're just asking questions. We're just engaging using our facilities to engage the problem, and it's definitely a really interesting problem. That's for sure. It's a super, super interesting problem. Just full of stuff. That's the super good news, right? I mean, it's just really loaded with stuff. And you can do something that would be kind of startlingly, if nothing else, just truthful. As a student that's not yet connected to a job or an institution that has to give some sort of a propaganda, you can freely identify, using your own brain, a notion of what the situation is. You can assess it and go, by the way, this is the problem, and it's X, Y, and Z, and it's kind of, it's a complicated one, for sure. Is it unsolvable? Nothing's unsolvable. Everything's solvable, right? To some degree, in some way. And it's way, to me, way broader. Way, way broader. Architecture is hurting you right now to be an architect. Just keep asking questions and see where it takes you. And it's, you don't know what's going to lead you to this or not. It might be something much more interesting. It might be a quote, or a cartoon, a comic book, or an advertisement, or just a strategy to approach something. where you reconfigure.
I've got to ask you, how this approach that you're presenting from shifting from design focus to strategy thinking, how would you see it reflecting back on the studies in school? Like what kind of new sets of skills we need to acquire here for students to tackle these future problems that you're talking about? Because we are focusing on
I just
design.
published a book called Concepts. I looked at that.
Okay.
I came out of a planning office when I was very young. When I Victor grew on LA was and it was fairly straightforward. At that time they were using what they called anticipatory planning. You anticipate the direction something can do. And that's kind of fun now, because nobody can anticipate. I mean, look, it died. Urban design is a discipline.
Oliver,
some sort of coherent approach. And it seems like I see it everywhere in schools now. People are looking at infrastructural, larger projects. It's just the smell. Again, the object thing is fast, and it's not going to disappear. It's just not going to focus. The generation of students have that. It's just using it. Look, I think as architects, we have a very interesting education, and then we're asked to solve complex problems that have multiple forces. And then all of us are used to doing that in all of our architecture. It has a response to the urban environment. It has a response to certain functionality. It has a location with an artistic, cultural principle, which has to do with art form. It's infrastructural. It has to do with landscape and the use of energy, on and on. And you put that together and put it on the board and defend it. And that's the only educational system that does that, meaning you have to internalize it also. You have to really understand it. As you draw the lines, they're your lines, right? And then you defend it in front of a jury. And I think those same skills are expanded, but way beyond the formal, into the broader types of questions you're asking that are just very obvious. And you use that ability to deal with the multiplicity of interconnected things that allow you to focus on some problem. And we're still, of all the disciplines, we seem to be the only still education that does that deals with that multi-force, intricate set of concepts. And it just seems like we need to push that further.
But it seems to me like we're
way
teaching.
hung up on the form.
It seems to me like we're teaching students to be the architects of yesterday instead of the architects of tomorrow. Still.
Actually, I'm going to discuss architecture only in an urbanistic term, but I'm going to actually stop, and I have a kind of an non-sequitur showing formal. But if you're going to deal with the formal, the first guy, then you've already dealt with ideas that you're looking at and are interested in the formal structure, like the last guy. I'm interested in willfulness of chance. I'm interested in happenstantial development of cities, and I'm studying. I'm making art pieces, let's say, constructions. They try to structure that. There's an idea I'm doing which I've got head on. And formal things, but that's just one of the aspects of the problem. And here, it's just using, it's just, the way you ask the questions will radically shift the way you start thinking about the problem. I'm going to talk about that in my institute at UCLA. When we first started asking structural questions, all of a sudden, all the problems started completely. They were no longer thinking of even isolated geographic problems. They were much more infrastructural connections that were a network. We moved from object thinking and contained geographic thinking to networking. And it just happened naturally. Again, the first guy, is he draws the map, and the map of the rails one size, and the autos one size, and the connection of the distribution of concrete is another one. It just naturally kind of moves you in a different place. You're no longer thinking about this thing and designing this little thing. You're thinking about the problem in its real terms, right? And then some of that, it gets really interesting, Because all of a sudden, one of the lines is on a plane, and it's starting to hop over the world, and it's the distribution of something, and it's starting to locate it. And now you really understand the problem. Because in fact, it has to do with the network problem of the distribution of some service or good or something made in that factory that's locating someplace, meaning that those things have influence on your thing. That if they change in the dynamic, it changes the problem. And it just starts you thinking, I think, in a very, very different way. Dynamically and scalar, micro, macro, and interconnected.
And an open system.
Yeah, yeah. Open, exactly.
Okay.
We have very little time, so if you want, just really quickly then. We have to move.
You don't have to move, you want to move.
No, they're all waiting there already.
Okay.
What time is it right now?
It's
So we have to-
3.
I need like a half an hour just to put some notes together.
Yeah, no, you will have time.
Is there anybody that could go to my hotel and pick up a package for me?
Yeah, also, this is what I came to ask. So, do you wanna, how do you wanna, we can send someone to your hotel.
Could you?
Yeah, sure. If you just wanna,
I do.
but you can finish up here. I'll wait until you're done, we go upstairs. And then while we go upstairs, you'll tell me exactly what to get.
So I need, this thing starts at 5:30?
At
So I need to
5:30 the
stop here just a
reception.
little before 5 o'clock.
Yeah, but we can finish up with the other studio around 4:30, and then you'll have an hour to.
Yeah, okay. It's
Freshen
just
up.
fun, I don't want to leave it. Okay.
All right, so I'll let maybe someone can bring Thom up.
Right. I want to say one more thing to the question. I think it's awesome to interact. People start looking at the problem within their auditors, it starts taking off. And then one conversation is just as useful as one person looking at the problem. And then something starts triggering things that are actually more important on their project than what we just talked about. Like I'm talking about the thing that you're connected with. Not so much to do with the concrete guy, but then all of a sudden you go, wait a minute. And I'll show you a product we did in LA, and LAX is 64 million people. Well, when you draw a hub of 64 million people, that's a pretty big city. And it just triggers ideas. You go, oh, let's put this over here, or let's move this over there. And you're thinking about the problem. You're starting to, it seems like the two projects we saw, you're inventing the problem, not the solution. That'd be easy. You're inventing the problem. The solution, you're not even, how would you do a solution? You know what the problem is. And that's the invention. That's what I was saying in the beginning. If you get that right, you're home. Now, formally, you can put together, don't put together. It's up to you. Someone's DNA. You are, you are. Right? But if you get the problem right, you got it. Right? That's the